Olivia had always lived a life of luxury. From a young age, she was surrounded by wealth, comfort, and everything a girl could ever want. Her father, a successful businessman, owned one of the biggest companies in town, and her mother was known for her charity work and elegance. Their house was a grand mansion with high walls, endless rooms, and beautiful gardens. Olivia never imagined a world where her life could be any different. But life, as it often does, took an unexpected turn. One cold winter morning, Olivia woke to the sound of her parents arguing. This was unusual. Her home had always been filled with warmth, laughter, and love. She tiptoed down the stairs and listened quietly from the hallway. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up," her father said, his voice low and strained. "We have to figure something out," her mother replied, her voice trembling. "We can't lose everything. What about Olivia?" Hearing her name made Olivia's heart race. What were they talking about? Lose everything. The thought of losing the life she knew made her stomach churn. She couldn't understand what was happening. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Her father looked tired all the time, and her mother seemed distant, as if she were always lost in her thoughts. Olivia overheard phone calls late at night, talks about money, debts, and businesses failing. Then, one day, her worst fear came true. Her parents sat her down in the living room, their faces pale and serious. "Olivia," her father began, "we have to tell you something important. The business it's gone. We've lost everything." The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. "What do you mean?" Olivia whispered, her eyes wide with shock. "We're bankrupt, darling," her mother explained, tears forming in her eyes. "We can't afford this house or anything we have anymore. We have to move out." Olivia couldn't breathe. The room felt like it was spinning. "But this is our home. How could this happen?" Her father looked away, unable to meet her eyes. "We made some bad investments. The market crashed, and we couldn't save the company." Within days, their lives changed completely. The mansion was sold, and everything they owned was taken to pay off debts. They moved into a tiny, run-down apartment in a rough part of town. The contrast between their old life and their new one was stark. The luxurious mansion, with its polished floors and sparkling chandeliers, was replaced by a small, dirty room with peeling wallpaper and creaky floors. For Olivia, life became a nightmare. She had to leave her private school and go to a public one. At her old school, she had been surrounded by wealth and privilege. But here, she felt like an outsider. Her clothes, once designer, were now second-hand, and the kids at school mocked her for trying to fit in. She didn't understand how everything could fall apart so quickly. Her parents struggled too. Her father worked long hours doing odd jobs just to put food on the table, and her mother, once the graceful lady of charity events, now worked as a cleaner at a nearby hotel. The stress of their new life weighed heavily on them, and Olivia could see it every time she looked into their eyes. They were broken, defeated by the cruel twists of fate. Months passed, and Olivia's world grew darker. One night, as she was trying to sleep in the cold apartment, she heard her parents whispering. It was the same low, urgent voices she had heard months ago when things first started to fall apart. "We're never going to recover from this," her mother said, her voice barely audible. Her father sighed deeply. "I don't know what to do anymore. I've tried everything. We've lost it all." Olivia squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself not to cry. She felt helpless. Everything was slipping away, and no matter how hard her parents worked, they couldn't climb out of the hole they had fallen into. Then, tragedy struck. It was a stormy night when Olivia's world shattered for the second time. Her parents had gone out, trying to meet with someone who might help them rebuild their lives. But as they were driving back, a truck skidded on the icy road and crashed into their car. The next thing Olivia knew, she was standing in the hospital, her heart pounding in her chest as a doctor approached her with tears in his eyes. "I'm so sorry," he said softly. "There was nothing we could do." Olivia felt the ground disappear beneath her. Her parents were gone. Just like that, her whole world was torn apart again. She had lost not only her home and her wealth, but now her family too. She was left completely alone, an orphan with nothing to her name. The days that followed were a blur of grief and confusion. Olivia was placed in the care of a distant relative, an aunt she barely knew, who lived far away in a small town. Her aunt wasn't unkind, but she wasn't loving either. She had her own struggles and didn't know how to deal with a grieving teenager. Olivia felt lost. She spent her days in silence, haunted by the memories of her parents, her old life, and the crushing weight of her new reality. She had to drop out of school and work as a waitress in a small cafe to support herself and help her aunt with expenses. The cafe was no mansion, but it was the only place Olivia could escape her sadness. At first, the work felt like a punishment, a reminder of everything she had lost, but over time, it became her sanctuary. She found comfort in the routine, in the small acts of kindness she could offer customers, and in the sense of control she had over something, even if it was small. But Olivia's journey was far from over. One evening, as she was wiping down tables after closing, she overheard a group of businessmen talking at the cafe. They were discussing a new business idea, something about real estate. As she listened, something sparked inside her. Despite all that had happened, Olivia still had the mind of a sharp businesswoman, something she had learned from her father. That night, she stayed up thinking about what she had heard. Ideas began to swirl in her head. She knew the market had changed, and she had a new perspective on life. She understood struggle, loss, and the importance of starting small. The next day, she took a bold step. With the little savings she had from her job, she bought a few books on business and real estate. Every night after her shifts, she would read, taking notes and teaching herself everything she could about the industry. Her passion for learning reignited the fire that had long been extinguished by loss. Over the next few years, Olivia worked tirelessly. She made connections with people she met at the cafe, using her charm and intelligence to learn as much as she could. Slowly but surely, she began investing in small properties. Her first investment was a run-down apartment building that no one else wanted. She worked day and night, using every penny she had to fix it up. She rented out the apartments and made a modest profit. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As her business grew, so did her confidence. She invested in more properties, always careful, always smart with her money. She never forgot the lessons she had learned from losing everything. She knew that wealth was fragile, and she worked hard to ensure she never found herself in that position again. Years passed, and Olivia became a successful businesswoman. She had rebuilt her life from the ground up, not through luck or inheritance, but through sheer willpower and determination. She was no longer the girl who had everything handed to her. She had earned every bit of her success. Eventually, she became the richest woman in the town, a town that had once pitied her for her fall from grace. People began to respect her, not just for her wealth, but for her resilience, her intelligence, and her generosity. She never forgot the people who helped her along the way, and she gave back to the community in ways her mother would have been proud of. Olivia had gone from rich to poor and back to rich again, but the real wealth she gained was far more valuable than money. She had learned the importance of kindness, perseverance, and the strength that comes from facing hardship head-on. Looking out over the town from her office window, Olivia thought about how far she had come. She had lost everything and everyone she loved, but in the process, she had found herself. She had discovered what truly mattered in life, not the fancy houses or the designer clothes, but the strength to rise after every fall. Her journey had been long and painful, but it had shaped her into the woman she was today, a woman who had built her life from the ashes, one brick at a time. And as she stood there, watching the sun set over the town that she now called home, she knew one thing for certain. No matter what the future held, she would never be afraid of losing again. Because she had already faced the worst, and she had come out stronger on the other side.